The Hokage. Not only are they the leaders of Konoha, carrying the will of fire to each new generation, but they are also some of the strongest, and at times, the strongest characters in the Naruto world. They are also some of the most popular characters in the series, sometimes garnering hardcore, Swiftie-esque passion from the fandom. So, if you've been in the Naruto community for long enough, you know exactly what you get when you pair super strong and exceptionally popular characters, all having some type of similarity. Ranking lists. While lots of people have ranked the Hokage in terms of power, and usually number 1 and number 7 are the same for everyone, 2 through 6 is a bit of a jumbled mess of debate and inconsistency in terms of ranking placements. However, today I will try to clear up some of those inconsistencies, add context to the more heated debates, and hopefully bring you a somewhat definitive answer to the long-argued, hotly debated topic of ranking the Hokage. Before we start ranking anything though, if you enjoy this type of content, please feel free to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. I post on YouTube at least once every other week, if not every week, and I post on my TikTok at Sage of Thick Calves every single day. So, without any further ado, let's jump into the list. At number 7, we have the 5th Hokage, Tsunade Senju. I'm pretty sure that this placement won't come as any surprise to the vast majority of the fandom, but I do want to clear up a couple of things. Number 1, if we included Danzo in this list, he would definitely be last. And number 2, Tsunade being the weakest Hokage does not make her weak. In fact, she was definitely the strongest Kage of her time. Yes, even stronger than A. Her displays of power in the war arc moved her up above the rest of the Kage of her time and added to her already legendary list of feats. Tsunade is most well known for her monstrous strength, and that strength was on full display during her battle against Madara. Not only was she capable of shattering Madara's Susanoo ribcage with one kick, she also dropped a full-body Wood Clone Susanoo with one shot as well. Keep in mind, Madara's Susanoo ribcage was capable of no-selling an Odama Rasengan from Naruto earlier in the war, and tanking attacks from the other 4 Kage multiple times. And his full-body, unarmored Susanoo took a Hirudora from Might Guy. It's just insane. And also, take this next one however you want, but Madara's half-body Susanoo, which should be weaker than his full-body Susanoo, or at least comparable, survived the Ten Tails Cataclysm. That attack is capable of wiping out entire countries and leaves a massive mushroom cloud in its wake. So, Tsunade being able to even harm a slightly lesser form of Madara Susanoo is absolutely insane. In terms of speed, Tsunade doesn't really have any crazy feats, but she was capable of at least being pretty useful in her battle against Madara, landing blows on Madara and his clones more than once. She also should be relative to the other Sannin, so I'd say her speed should be pretty comparable to their high-end speed feats. However, who needs insane speed when you have ridiculous durability? So, I may have lied earlier. While Tsunade is in fact known worldwide for her asinine strength, she might even be more famous for her medical ninjutsu. Her ability to counter Chiyo's poisons during the Second Great Shinobi War was pivotal in Konoha's eventual victory. She was even hailed as the greatest medical ninja in the world until her student, Sakura, eventually took the torch. Although, her medical ninjutsu doesn't just apply to others. Tsunade, through the use of the Byakugo seal, can regenerate at a similar rate to Hashirama, driving her already impressive raw durability through the roof. With her mitotic regeneration, Tsunade survives not only being stabbed through the chest by Madara, only to continue fighting after the wound quickly sealed itself, but also being cut in half. Not only can she tank piercing attacks though, she can also tank a point-blank range Yasaka Magatama straight to the chest and recover almost instantly. And if that doesn't do it for you, not even Madara's fire style can take her down. So I think it's pretty clear that she is an absolute tank, and she has outrageous physical abilities, but what about her jutsu? Well, as stated before, Tsunade was considered the best medical ninja in the world for basically 3 to 4 decades. With her elite abilities in medical ninjutsu, Tsunade was capable of healing all 4 of the other Kage from critical states in a short amount of time during the war. But that's just scratching the surface of what she can do. You see, Tsunade can summon Katsuyu, her giant slug summon that she uses to help her in battle. And while acidic spray is incredibly useful, the most impressive thing Tsunade has done using Katsuyu is healing thousands of people at once after Pain's assault on Konoha. And before anyone says, oh, that was all Katsuyu, Katsuyu states that her healing is based entirely on Tsunade's chakra. So Tsunade effectively used Katsuyu as an extension of herself to heal thousands of people at once. Absolutely insane. That being said, her chakra levels are clearly through the roof. The amount of chakra and endurance required to pull something off like that is ridiculous. If healing thousands of people at once with just your own chakra isn't crazy enough, though, Tsunade was capable of summoning Katsuyu after Madara cut her in half, and then healing the other Kage from near death while still recovering from her own bisection. So, although she does rank last on this list, I hope I've made it perfectly clear that the woman responsible for Konoha placing medical shinobi on every team is quite powerful, even amongst the strongest of shinobi. But there's a reason she's 7 and not 6, because coming in at number 6, we have the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju. I know. A lot of you might be having an actual aneurysm right now, and admittedly, I initially had Tobirama swapped with the person who's at number 5, but after examining the feats, I came to the conclusion that I had been playing the game of control the character and use their abilities for them, instead of just examining the feats themselves. And while Tobirama does have some insane feats, I think the showings of the other shinobi above him on this list, and specifically the one right above him, make it clear that this is exactly where he should be. I will say, however, if you want to swap 6 and 5 for personal reasons, I wouldn't be too terribly bothered by it, because they are incredibly close, and I'll even play that game of control the character here in just a moment to show you how broken Tobirama should be. But before that, let's get into the feats. While Tobirama appears at number 6 on this list, he's definitely no slouch in any regard. His physical abilities alone make him an elite shinobi, and despite not having any real insane strength feats, he battles with the likes of Izuna, Madara, and, as an Edo, old Hiruzen, and never really seems to struggle in terms of strength, so I think we can comfortably get him in that range. However, his speed is where he shines. Hailed as the fastest shinobi of his time, even by Madara, Tobirama is easily one of the fastest shinobi in the verse. While his physical speed seems to be relative to Hashirama and Hiruzen, with all of them arriving at the Fourth War battlefield simultaneously right after Minato, the thing that makes his speed go up an entire tier is the use of the FTG. With the use of his FTG, Tobirama pulls off some absolutely insane feats, specifically in his fight against Jubito. For context, Jubito was able to straight up blitz KCM Naruto and EMS Sasuke with next to zero difficulty. However, this same Jubito got outsped by Tobirama on 3 separate occasions. At one point in their fight, Tobirama uses a shadow clone to place explosive tags and an FTG seal on Jubito without Jubito even noticing, but that was just more of a combat speed trickery feat though. What about actually blitzing him? Well, we see Tobirama, much later in that fight, teleport Naruto behind Jubito to blast him in the back with a Sage Mode Rasengan before he can react. But this next one is my favorite. At one point in the battle, Jubito launches a Truth Seeker orb at Minato and begins to detonate it, but before it can fully explode, Tobirama teleports to it, grabs it, teleports back to Jubito, and says, "You can have this back." Bro was icy with it. But what makes this moment even better though is that Tobirama used a shadow clone, and at a different part in the war, he specifically states that shadow clones are slower with the FTG. So Tobirama in his real body could have done that even faster. Absolutely insane. And obviously, if he would have touched the Truth Seeker orbs with his real Edo Tensei body, it wouldn't have regenerated, so that's why he didn't do it, but it would have been faster. And this is a speed feat, so it's crazy. Speaking of Edo regeneration, durability is a weird one for Tobirama since we almost exclusively see him in Edo. But if you assume that he's got Kage level durability, likely up there with Hiruzen and Minato, I think that's fair. He did battle with the likes of Izuna and Madara, so I think you can put him comfortably somewhere around there. In terms of his jutsu arsenal, Tobirama is one of the greatest shinobi to ever live. Not only does he possess numerous high-level water jutsu, but he also created some of the most important and dangerous jutsus of all time, namely the FTG, Edo Tensei, and Shadow Clone techniques. A side note, how you create a jutsu that requires a living sacrifice and pulls the soul of another from the Pure Land to inhabit the sacrificial body is beyond me, but Tobirama was definitely doing some suspicious stuff, but that's beside the point. We've already touched on the FTG, so I'll make this quick, but the FTG basically allows him to teleport himself, anything he's touching, or anything his chakra is touching, to any location he's previously marked. He was even able to use this to teleport both halves of the Nine Tails during the war. He also seems to imply that he can use the FTG barrier seal that Minato used against the Nine Tails Bijou Bomb when he says that he can teleport one of the Jubi Bijou Damas, but we're not entirely certain. I feel like that's probably a pretty solid assumption though. As far as Edo Tensei goes, as explained earlier, it allows for Tobirama to bind the soul of a deceased person to a living vessel, restoring them to as they were in the last moments of their lives in order to do the user's bidding. This is an incredibly powerful jutsu to have, since you can basically summon a really powerful shinobi to fight your battles for you, and this summon is basically invincible, able to regenerate from any attacks, and is limitlessly refilling their chakra. When Tobirama created the Edo Tensei though, he created it in tandem with another jutsu, the tandem paper bombs technique. The tandem paper bombs, or mutually multiplying explosive tags, is a technique that was purposely designed for those who have been reanimated and employs the use of explosive tags to play the control the character game. We all know that Tobirama is easily one of the strongest shinobi in the history of Naruto, so he was most likely the first or second strongest shinobi on any given battlefield at any given time in his life. That said, had he prepared even a little bit ahead of time, and even then he wouldn't have to prepare that much, could he not have just incapacitated some of his weaker enemies and then forced them to become reanimations, maybe reanimating some shinobi he had already killed in that battle, and then load them up with tandem paper bombs and force them to go fight their friends, only to basically super kamikaze them? And could you imagine? You are on the battlefield and you see your buddy who just died, Jimmy, running at you full speed, and you're like, Jimmy, what happened? And then boom, you're dead. Like, that's OP, dude. If we get a Minato or a Tobirama one-shot manga after the Minato one-shot manga, I need to see this happen. This and his fight against the Kinkaku Force, because that's so murky in terms of lore. Anyway, Tobirama is also responsible for the Shadow Clone Jutsu, and by extension, the Multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu. Again, how you figure out how to do that is beyond me, but this is why Tobirama is a genius, and I'm just a guy with a laptop. Oh, I almost forgot. When Tobirama was pinned down by the black chakra receiving rods, he also seemed to imply that he could use the Ghost Transformation Jutsu, but he could have meant something else. It just seems like that's the most logical conclusion to make. Tobirama is also an incredible sensory ninja, being able to sense not only the war, but also Madara's individual chakra from literal countries away. He also did something similar to this with the Kinkaku Force, being able to detect how many shinobi there were and how strong they were, deducing that they must be the Kinkaku Force based on their tracking skills and their overall power. Speaking of overall power and chakra levels, Tobirama's chakra level is really impressive. After hearing what Sasuke planned to do, Tobirama flexed his chakra, causing all of Team Taka to go on high alert, even making Suigetsu appear to either sweat or start liquefying a little bit. Tobirama was also capable of using high-level chakra-taxing techniques, such as the FTG, seemingly with no issue. This same technique required 3 members of the Hokage Guard Squad to use, and even then it was exhausting for them. So, although we don't get a ton of crazy stamina feats from him because, he's an Edo most of the time we see him, we know his chakra had to have been pretty freaking high. As you can probably tell by now, Tobirama is an absolute monster, both physically and in terms of his jutsu arsenal. However, his mind is arguably his greatest weapon of all. As I previously mentioned, Tobirama created the reanimation, shadow clone, tandem paper bombs, and flying Raijin jutsus. What I didn't mention, though, is he's also responsible for the current shinobi system used worldwide, as he established the ninja ranking system, the graduation academy, and the chunin exams, mostly in an effort to keep children off the battlefield. He also deduced that Jubito was weak to senjutsu, after only seeing him get hit with it once. He was also capable of seeing that Orochimaru had been enhanced by Hashirama's cells after giving him a quick look, albeit after Hashirama deduced it first, but it's his cells, so that makes sense. So, in short, Tobirama has elite physical stats, an insane jutsu arsenal, and one of the greatest minds in the Naruto universe. However, as I hinted at before, the person who's next on this list has some feats and statements that seem to outright tell you that he is above Tobirama. So, coming in at number 5, we have the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. As I said before, I initially had Hiruzen at 6 and Tobirama at 5. However, after closer examination of the feats and statements, I believe the narrative wants us to see Hiruzen as superior to Tobirama. For one, it's outright stated in the databooks that he is more talented than Tobirama and has been since his youth. And since he lived to about 70-ish, he should have reached his full potential at some point, meaning that even if Tobirama reached his full potential in his 50, 60 years or so, that Hiruzen should have surpassed him. I would like to clear up one misconception, though. I think that Six and Swaikage have actually addressed this before, but the statement in part 1 about Hiruzen having superlative strength in comparison to the previous Hokage could be interpreted, and I think should be interpreted, as literally as possible. The statement in question verbatim says, "It's said that he possessed superlative strength even compared to the other Hokage." That literally means that people have said that, not necessarily that it's true. I think that if Kishimoto wanted Hiruzen being the strongest Hokage up to that point to be taken as truth, he wouldn't have included the "it's said" part. This statement is also coming from Iruka, who wouldn't have been alive during the first and second's reign, so it definitely shouldn't be taken as gospel. Just thought that was worth mentioning, but without any further ado, let's dive into the feats. When Naruto nearly got captured by the God Tree, not even Tobirama's water style was capable of freeing him, and yet Hiruzen dashes in and just with brute strength and the adamantine staff, smashes right through the wood from the God Tree, freeing Naruto, arguably his best strength feat. That is, outside of the non-canon feat of him pushing Kurama outside of Konoha using his adamantine staff. However, that's anime only, whereas it seems that he had help in the manga, but take that as you will. Hiruzen's speed feats, however, are what really impressed me when doing research for this video. For one, when the Hokage arrived at the Fourth War battlefield, Minato arrived first, unsurprisingly, but Hiruzen, Tobirama, and Hashirama all arrived at the same time. They got there using their body flicker too, so physical speed, meaning that their physical speed is at least relative. The Viz translation says teleportation, but the original word Tobirama uses is shunshin, meaning body flicker. So again, Tobirama and Hiruzen should be at least relative in travel speed. There are two feats, however, that seem to imply that Hiruzen might have slightly better physical combat speed than Tobirama. And I say physical because obviously the FTG isn't physical combat speed. But that being said, we're going to go back to when Hiruzen saved Naruto from the God Tree. In that moment, Tobirama is trying to get to Naruto, but he can't. He can cut through the God Tree, but he's not able to actually get to Naruto. And then he asks Minato, after saying it's useless, "Can you get into there with your teleportation?" To which Minato says no because of his chakra. But to me, this implies one of two things. Either Tobirama was not fast enough to get in there and Hiruzen was, or Tobirama just couldn't destroy the God Tree tendrils fast enough to create an opening for himself. So that one is a little bit shaky, but worth noting. This next one, however, is a one-to-one comparison that happens back to back. In the fight against Jubito, Tobirama and Hashirama's clones get blitzed and absolutely just demolished, torn in half. Tobirama is able to lay some explosive tags and an FTG seal in the process, but he couldn't dodge, not even a little bit. However, later Hiruzen is able to at least partially dodge one of Jubito's attacks. He still gets kind of clipped, but he's able to at least react when Tobirama was unable to do so. So again, even though Tobirama was hailed as the fastest man of his time in terms of physical speed, they're at least relative. The FTG definitely gives Tobirama the speed advantage, though I will concede that 100 times out of 100. As far as durability goes, Hiruzen, he doesn't really have a ton of crazy feats because we get to see the fight with Orochimaru, and then we get to see him as an Edo. But in the fight with Orochimaru, he does take getting stabbed through the back and getting kind of pummeled by Tobirama and Hashirama and Orochimaru, and he makes it all the way to the end and is still able to, seal away Orochimaru's arms. So he's got some pretty good durability, and he's capable of sustaining combat with Kage-level opponents. So I think we can comfortably get his durability right around the same level as like Tobirama and Orochimaru, minus the, body substitution technique that he uses. So we know physically, Hiruzen is an absolute beast, but what about his ninjutsu? Well, according to Orochimaru, Hiruzen was hailed as the professor for knowing all of Konoha's jutsu. I will say, this definitely doesn't apply to Kekkei Genkai, and probably doesn't apply to secret clan techniques, but he should know everything else, and that would include the FTG, Chidori, the Rasengan, Edo Tensei, etc., but that doesn't necessarily mean he could use those to the same level as the others. Anyway, take that statement however you want. Regardless of how you slice it though, his jutsu arsenal is actually insane. Along with his absurdly powerful elemental jutsu, Hiruzen has the strongest animal summon in the Naruto universe in Monkey King Enma. Along with potentially rivaling Hiruzen himself in physical power, Enma can transform into an adamantine staff, or even adamantine staff structures, with adamantine being the most durable substance in the Naruto universe. He can even partially transform, allowing for him to leave an arm or leg or something untransformed so he can reach out and go grab onto opponents like what he did against Orochimaru, and this makes him an incredibly useful summoning. But being the professor and knowing all of Konoha's jutsu, Hiruzen must also have some sealing jutsu, none of which are more powerful than his Reaper Death Seal. Hiruzen can use this technique to summon the Shinigami and use it to seal away his opponent into a different dimension. This is, however, a double-edged sword, killing the user in the process. The chakra and endurance section of Hiruzen's breakdown is a bit weird because we only ever really see him as a 70-year-old man, far from his prime, and as an Edo Tensei with limitlessly refilling chakra. But based on what we did see of him as an old man, and the techniques he was able to perform as an Edo, we can get a pretty decent idea of how much chakra and stamina he had in his prime. Spoiler alert, it was a lot. In his battle with Orochimaru, Hiruzen, as a 70-year-old man, was able to launch several powerful ninjutsus at Orochimaru and swap hands with him for a bit before Orochimaru summoned Hashirama and Tobirama. After they're summoned, Hiruzen counters Tobirama's water-style techniques with his own fire-style and earth-style techniques. He then goes on to summon Enma, cause him to transform a few times, and get beat up by his predecessors before making 2 shadow clones, summoning the Shinigami in 3 different parts. It's weird, but performing the Reaper Death Seal on them. And then after all of this, Hiruzen still has the energy to perform the Reaper Death Seal on Orochimaru, while impaled through the back, and still manages to seal away Orochimaru's arms. That is actually crazy. Orochimaru even states that had Hiruzen been just 10 years younger, he would have won. So, as a decrepit old man with a severe mental nerf, because he didn't want to kill his student, far from his prime, Hiruzen was capable of sustaining a level of combat high enough to stalemate Orochimaru for, I believe, over an hour. Then, you just look at the scale of the ninjutsu he pulled off in the war, and now we have a vague idea of how strong this dude could have been in his prime. So, regardless of where you rank Hiruzen, I believe he should be just above Tobirama. The story seems to go out of its way to show and tell you where and why he's better, but if the FTG puts Tobirama over the edge for you, I'm not mad at that. I understand the application of the FTG is kind of broken, so I totally get it. Before I begin the next section of this video, I'd like to add a bit of a disclaimer. These next 3 could all be ordered any which way you like. They all have some type of argument for being over the other 2, and how you feel about these rankings will largely depend on what you determine to be canon. However, I believe that I've been as fair as possible with these 3, taking all of the canon material into consideration, but also making my best effort to keep things like meta scaling out of it. With that being said, this is the upper tier of the list. The next 4 are all far and away stronger than the previous 3, and we're starting off with a banger, because coming in at number 4, we have the 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze. Like I said, Minato and the next two all have an argument for being over each other, but Minato unfortunately gets the short end of the stick here because he died so young and thus wasn't able to fulfill his full potential. In the war arc, we get to see him achieve KCM, which catapults him even higher than he already was, but we're only considering feats that these characters could perform while alive, so the KCM stuff doesn't apply here. This does not mean he's weak though. I recently did a Minato's power video detailing how powerful he is in full, so I'll keep this relatively quick, but if you'd like to watch that video, I'll add a link to it in the description. In terms of physical strength, Minato doesn't have a ton of showings, but he is able to slice through one of Gyuki's tails with a kunai and leave a large crater in the ground beneath it. His speed, though, is obviously where he shines. With just his physical speed, he was able to outspeed the other previous Kage to the Fourth War battlefield, and even save an infant Naruto from Obito's stab, covering several meters in the time it took Obito to move a couple inches. However, his FTG is what really amps his speed. With his FTG, Obito is able to outspeed 8th Gate Guy in the War Arc, and even outspeed Obito's Kamui multiple times. In terms of Minato's durability, he was able to survive the blast of his Rasengan canceling out Kurama's Bijou Bomb, so that's super impressive. In terms of Minato's ninjutsu arsenal, it mostly consists of FTG, Rasengan, and high-level sealing jutsu, usually used in conjunction with one another. His FTG barrier seal was capable of teleporting away a full Kurama's Bijou Dama miles away, and he was even able to teleport Kurama himself some distance away as well. Minato's Rasengan at around 16 years old was capable of stalemating the power of a suppressed Nine-Tails Bijou Dama inside of the astral chakra dimension in Kushina's mind, where he should be weaker than he normally is. He also happened to have a Kurama cloaked fist impaling him while he did this, so it's incredibly impressive. His sealing jutsu also got high praise from Kurama, with Kurama even going as far as to compare his skill as a shinobi to Hashirama. Using the Reaper Death Seal while impaled, it happens to him a lot apparently, Minato was also able to split the Nine-Tails, seal half of it within himself, half of it within Naruto, and seal a bit of his own chakra within Naruto in order to strengthen the seal if needed down the road, which is insane. Minato can also summon the Toad Summons, including Gamabunta, so that's his ninjutsu arsenal. With Minato being able to perform such high-level ninjutsu so frequently and effectively, even while being critically wounded, means Minato has outrageous chakra and endurance. Slap Sage Mode on top of that crazy physical stat and ninjutsu arsenal base that he has, and Minato becomes even more monstrous. Minato also possesses one of the greatest intellects in the series, being able to come up with a counter for Obito's Kamui after only seeing it once, so he can both overpower you and outthink you. Pretty crazy. Again, why I did an entire video on that, so go check that out. However, Minato could not overpower or outthink the next person on this list, because coming in at number 3, we have the 6th Hokage, Kakashi Hatake. Let me pause here for just a second. I know that some of you, if not a majority of you watching this video, haven't read the Hiden or Retsuden novels. Luckily, I did, so you don't have to, although I would recommend reading them since they're pretty good. That being said, for those who have read them, you understand this ranking, but for those who haven't, I hope I can show you just why Kakashi scales this high, and possibly even higher. Keep in mind, everything from the War Arc is lower scaling than where he is currently, since it's outright stated in Kakashi Retsuden that his combat abilities have significantly increased from the time he fought Obito and Madara. In terms of physical strength, Kakashi has never been a slouch. In the Fourth War, Kakashi not only is able to wield the Executioner's Blade and just cleave people in half with it, but his punches were able to draw blood from a Rinnegan Obito. But his most impressive strength feat is being able to stand and even run in the heavy gravity dimension that prevents Kaguya, Six-Path Sage Mode Naruto, and Rinnegan Sasuke from even standing. There is a theory out there that that dimension weighs down people with more chakra more, but that's nowhere suggested or mentioned or even hinted at in the actual series, so it's total headcanon, but you guys are allowed to think whatever you want about that, but it's impressive nonetheless. In terms of his durability, the only thing we really need to know is that during the War Arc, he was durable enough to tank level 2 tailed beast attacks directly to the chest and remain completely unfazed, and he went toe-to-toe with the likes of Rinnegan Obito, tanking blows from him over and over again, so his durability is incredibly high. Although Kakashi's physical stats have certainly increased because they are combat abilities, Kakashi's ninjutsu arsenal is where we get the biggest changes during the post-war era. After Madara ripped his Sharingan out of his face, Kakashi lost the ability to safely use the Raikiri, but he created all new techniques to replace it. The first of which is basically a better, more versatile version of the Raikiri called Shinden, or Purple Electricity. With this jutsu, Kakashi covers his hand or body in purple electricity and can either launch it as a projectile, such as when he cut the head off of one of Nue's massive tails, or use it in close range, such as when he swiped at Kashin Koji, or he can use it at mid-range, similar to the Chidori stream. Keep in mind, the Boruto anime is supposed to be considered canon. If you don't personally consider it canon, I totally get it. It pains me to see the animation on there when the same studio is making Thousand Year Blood War, and it's absolutely beautiful, so I stopped watching it. I've only been reading the manga for a long time now, but the manga and anime teams do work together to make a story that doesn't contradict itself, and the showrunners have been very, very adamant that the Boruto anime is canon. But the Shinden isn't anime exclusive though, as we see it several times in Kakashi Hiden, being able to be used in a variety of different ways, one of which is being able to create a thunderstorm by launching a massive burst of electricity into the clouds. This actually prompts Oniki to say that Hidden Leaf Shinobi are crazy, so I mean, if Oniki's impressed by it, I think we should be. Shinden is far from his only jutsu that he's developed since the war though. Kakashi also developed a jutsu called the Quartz Wall Jutsu. It's basically just a fancy modification of the mud wall that Kakashi used to cancel out lightning style chakra, which is earth style's weakness, so canceling out the elemental disadvantage. He uses this technique after erecting a mud wall of at least 30 meters in height. It's said to be the size of a small hill, which can be around 50 meters, so conservatively 30 meters, and it surrounded an entire city. Once it's up, mercenaries and shinobis began launching attacks at it, from cannonballs to lightning-style ninjutsu. And when a shinobi uses a replica of the Chidori, Kakashi changes the spot he's attacking into quartz to dispel the attack. Oh, but that's not the only jutsu he has that can overcome elemental disadvantage. Arguably his strongest jutsu is the fire-style water mist jutsu. With this, he creates giant flame birds that he can use either offensively or defensively, sometimes throwing them at his opponent or sometimes allowing them to remain over his head to protect him. These fire birds can even launch fire out of their mouths, like dragons. Yeah, you heard that right. His fire bird can shoot fire from its face. Kakashi uses this absurdly powerful jutsu to counter water-style attacks from the Prime Minister of Rodaku, who was using a weapon called the Suigu that was created and left behind by the Sage of Six Paths and uses Sage of Six Paths chakra to create enough water to flood an entire country. When the Prime Minister uses this tool, Kakashi uses his fire-style water mist jutsu to counter it, effectively overcoming elemental disadvantage and Sage of Six Paths chakra at the same time. Kakashi also still has all of the 1000 plus jutsu he copied with the Sharingan, and is a master of all 5 basic elemental releases as well as Yin and Yang. In Kakashi Retsuden, he even uses a Genjutsu to convince the enemy that he still has a Sharingan to kind of freak him out and then take him out. So we know Kakashi has an absolutely crazy combination of both elite physical abilities and an elite ninjutsu arsenal, but his issue has always been chakra and stamina, right? Well, apparently he doesn't have that problem anymore. As far back as the war arc, we began to see signs that his chakra and stamina had improved dramatically. Before getting his chakra refilled by Naruto, Kakashi was able to pull off Kamui 5 times, Raikiri and its variants 8 times, the Mud Wall 2 times, and the Shadow Clones once. That's definitely an impressive amount of high-level jutsu, but remember, his combat abilities have significantly increased since then. That includes chakra and stamina, and that was on full display during the events of Kakashi Retsuden. Remember that time when I said Kakashi erected a mud wall of at least 30 meters around an entire city? Yeah, well, he maintained it for over 12 hours, something a shinobi he was fighting against deemed impossible, all while defending and repairing it from cannon fire and ninjutsu consistently. And then, once the battle moved to the Prime Minister, he used his fire-style water mist jutsu multiple times, countering each attack from the Prime Minister, again using water made of Six Paths chakra. He eventually defeats the Prime Minister, and even though he's exhausted, he's still standing. So, He erected a 30-meter mud wall, changing its properties and repairing it over and over again, maintaining it for over 12 hours, and then he fought a dude with 6 past powers and beat him, despite elemental disadvantage. Bro's chakra is ridiculous. On top of this, Kakashi has always been one of the smartest characters in the series, and that certainly hasn't changed. If anything, he's gotten smarter. Now, here is where I'm going to pause and add another disclaimer. Kakashi could be higher, but admittedly, it makes me feel a bit uncomfortable to put him above Hashirama and definitely Naruto. If you want to get really weird and meta with me though, and keep in mind, I don't use this argument, but I just want to show you how weird Boruto to Naruto scaling can get. You could scale Kakashi to Kashi and Koji based on their skirmish, who would be relative to, if not stronger than Delta based on this panel where he said that he could beat her, and then Delta fought on par with a suppressed 6-path Sage Mode Naruto. So again, I don't like using this argument because it feels like the entire narrative goes against it, and Boruto scaling is weird, but if you want to go on that line of scaling, it would go Kakashi is relative to Koji, who's relative to Delta, who's relative to a suppressed 6-path Sage Mode Naruto, who's stronger than Fused Momoshiki, who's stronger than Kaguya, who's way stronger than Hashirama, therefore Kakashi over Hashirama. Again, I don't like this argument, but if you want to use it, feel free. Honestly, if you want to argue suppressed 6-path Sage Mode Naruto over Sage Mode Naruto, then you could follow that trail to say Kakashi over current Sage Mode Naruto, but that's why scaling is really weird sometimes. That being said, Kakashi's feats in Retsuden and Hiden should comfortably get arguably the greatest prodigy in Naruto's history over the others on this list beneath him. However, what is a prodigy to a god of shinobi? Next up, we have at number 2, the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju. Hashirama Senju is easily one of the strongest shinobi of all time, consistently showing his superiority even to the likes of Madara Uchiha throughout their lives. Hailing from the Senju clan, being famous for well-roundedness in every category of combat, Hashirama displayed the Senju's might like no one before him or no one since has ever been able to do. In terms of physical strength, Hashirama consistently clashes with Madara, both as an Edo and while alive, so his physical strength should be about equal to Madara's. And Hashirama's speed isn't necessarily what he's known for, but he is incredibly fast. He arrives at the Fourth War battlefield at the same time as Hiruzen and Tobirama, with all of them using their body flicker techniques. Just like his strength, Hashirama scales consistently to Madara, so he should be comfortably right around that level. Hashirama's durability, however, is the stuff of legend. Hashirama owes part of his durability to his healing factor, but even aside from that, his raw durability is among the best in the verse. In his fight against Madara while alive, he no-sells the blast from a Bijudama at close range with absolutely no issue. In case you're thinking this is an outlier feat, also against Madara while beating down the majestic attire Susanoo Kurama, Hashirama also no-sells the blast from the Artifacts of Buddha and the 10th Edict on Enlightenment attacks, with the explosion from the attack dwarfing a cluster of mountains. Add on his insane regeneration, and you have arguably one of the toughest dudes to unalive in the Naruto universe. Hashirama's healing factor isn't technically classified as a ninjutsu, but Madara likened it to Tsunade's healing provided to her by the Byakugo seal, except he said that her healing, which allowed her to come back from being cut in half, paled in comparison to Hashirama's, so that would imply that he could also come back from wounds such as that, and even worse. The ninjutsu Hashirama is most known for, however, is his wood style. By combining water and earth releases, Hashirama can create wood, trees, and other plants, such as giant flowers that can kill you or put you to sleep depending on how much you inhale the powder they release. Hashirama's wood style also provides him the ability to create massive structures he can use in combat, such as his massive wood golem, which is capable of catching a Bijudama from Kurama and shoving it back in his face. He also can create gigantic hands that sprout up and, catch Madara's Susanoo blade. This overpowered Kekkei also gives Hashirama access to clones, which are basically like shadow clones, but can take a lot more damage. And if that's not good enough for you, the God of Shinobi can also use his wood style to create deity gates, which are massive red wooden gates used to pin down and immobilize his opponents, such as whenever he used them to immobilize Madara, or more impressively, the actual Ten Tails. Side note, after the Ten Tails Bijudama went off, the deity gates were still standing, so good luck destroying them. But as you probably know, the crown jewel of Hashirama's wood style is the veritable 1,000-armed cannon, or as some people like to call it, the Buddha statue. This thing is absolutely menacing. Genuinely, there's no reason why a human being in any universe should be able to create something like this. But first of all, look at the size of that thing. It makes Kurama look tiny. You see those in the back? Yeah, those are mountains. And it's not just big and useless. This thing can do some damage. When Madara took control of the Nine Tails, a full Nine Tails by the way, he decided to drip him out with some sick new war gear made of his Susanoo armor. And the 1,000-armed cannon beat the brakes off of him. All hands too, just straight up a physical beatdown. So yeah, Hashirama's physical abilities are top tier, he can regenerate, and he has maybe the best jutsu arsenal of any mere mortal. But what about his chakra and endurance? He's gotta have a weakness, no? Yeah. No. During the war arc, after Naruto gives literally thousands of shinobi chakra via sharing Kurama's chakra with them, Hashirama states that Naruto's chakra is comparable to his own. And this statement seems to be implying that it's not just Naruto's chakra he's referring to, but the sum of Naruto's chakra plus Kurama's chakra. Chakra levels like that are absolutely monstrous. With his monstrous chakra, not only was he able to fight Madara for more than a day and seem relatively fine by the end, he was also able to chakra flex Tobirama into submission with his chakra pressure, causing cracks in the walls and floor around them and making Suigetsu actually melt. Orochimaru even thinks to himself that Hashirama could break out of the Edo control if he wanted to, something even Tobirama couldn't do. But there's a reason why Hashirama can't be first on this list, because above the god of shinobi, we have a god killer. That's right, as you probably expected, coming in at number 1 on our list, we have the 7th Hokage, Naruto Uzumaki. Look, this video is already 41 minutes long, so I'll keep this quick. All you really need to know is that he has Baryon mode, and with it, he can beat down Ishiki with barely any effort. And even if you want to take that away, Naruto in base briefly swapped hands with a fused Momoshiki who's stronger than Kaguya. Then you stack KCM on top of that, Sage mode on top of that, and sprinkle in 6-pass Sage mode for good measure, and yeah, none of these dudes are touching him. I will say Naruto has been significantly nerfed since he lost Kurama, but with his raw base stats and his ability to access Sage mode, he should still be pretty comfortably above the rest. So yeah, as you all probably guessed, Naruto is the strongest Hokage. But what did you guys think? Did I miss anything? Am I totally wrong or 100% right? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this type of content and my commitment to making 40+ minute videos, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Have an awesome day.